Hey, I'm Brett Waller. Almost forgot. Brett Waller with Big Baby Head Design, and welcome to another session of Applied Geometry for Artists. As I've said before, don't forget the coffee. Okay. Okay. What I'm going to talk about a little bit today, I talked about the egg for a whole bunch of this series, and what I'd like to talk a little bit about is there's another piece that's involved in this project, and it is it's this. I'll show you the scale model later. Anyway, there's a scale model for it. It's a wing. I call it a wing. In thinking about these projects, these two pieces for this project called Confluence is the name of the project. Mostly I dealt with shapes and forms when I was talking about the egg, and I'm not going to talk too much about the shape and form of this. I'm going to talk about some math that was involved in scaling up. I'm going to talk about proportions and how I get to the math. Now, all these things, all these sculptures, well, commissioned ones at any rate, have a certain practical limits. Well, all sculptures have practical limits. Practical limits being, is it too heavy to be able to support itself? Is there enough structure in it to support its own weight? There's a practical limit. Gravity. I want gravity to be our friend. But beyond that, there's some practical limits that have to do with, if it's a commissioned sculpture, where is it going? So you've got to be, within those confines of, access, egress. Can people, there are terms that have to do with architecture, really. Can people get around this thing? Or if they have, if they can't get around it, is that part of the point of the sculpture? Like Richard Serra, some of his big tilted arcs was the whole point of the piece, was that you have to walk a long way to get around it. And it actually pissed off a lot of people down there on Wall Street where the piece was, and because they were in a big hurry and they had to walk around this piece of sculpture. But it was a way of him getting you to deal with the piece. It's kind of funny, the results of that problem he was having. Look it up if you want to. They removed his piece, and he ended up suing them for removing his sculpture and won. So look it up, Richard Serra. This piece, some of the practical limitations are, and I don't want to talk too long on practical limitations. I don't like to talk about limitations near as much as I like to talk about possibilities. So there were some limitations to this. This was a commissioned piece. The first thing they wanted me to do is going in this window, this big clerestory window, both the pieces are, and it's in a stairwell. And so I had to go down and take measurements, and it was a 20-foot height, and there's considerations such as the pieces are going to be hanging from the ceiling, and do I want people to be able to touch them or not? In this case, not, because I didn't want people, they're kind of fragile, the pieces, people jumping up and getting an idea of swinging on them. So I had to take some of this into consideration, and let me just, I hope you can see this. This is an elevation view of the stairwell and some photographs of some people in that stairwell. Can you see it? Not touching the sculptures, which are here. Here's where the sculptures are going to be. Here's the window. This is the side of the building. Here's the stairwell. Here's some people reaching and not being able to touch the sculptures within 2 foot. So there's some practical considerations. So the sculptures had to fall within a certain size to meet that, okay? Within a range. And so once I had that range, I started dealing with the numbers, the actual sizes. And then it got really interesting because I started using math. I had a scale model and I scaled it up. And I started using math to determine I used math to determine certain aesthetics of the piece, because numbers are very kind of magical. if you think all the way back to, I don't know, I learned this stuff from principles of humanism when I was studying architecture and art history. The ancient Greeks and Romans liked to use these ideas of harmonics when designing a building. And they used principles of humanism, like they measured, the Da Vinci thing with the arms out, and they measured the limits of the human body and how the parts of the human body related to itself as a whole, and then they turned those into ratios. I talked about ratios before, like what is the ratio of the finger to the wrist to the arm to the whole arm, and what is the relationship of the diameter of the wrist to the diameter of the arm, to the diameter of the waist, etc., etc. Those are ratios and proportions. So they started designing buildings that way, thinking that the human being was, God's most perfect form, and so let's design buildings with those ratios in mind. And they did that, and they were looking for what would be beautiful harmonics. And I don't know about the truth of that, but it's a starting point for design. So I think I'm about to run out of tape. So this is Brett Waller from Big Baby Head, and remember, always practice safe design, use a concept.